Hello, Women's Information Network members. I am so delighted to be chatting with you again today. Yvonne Heath here, author, speaker, and changemaker, founder of Love Your Life to Death. And I wanted to start today to talk about, well, the elephant in the room, grief. I want to have the conversation about grief because I feel like this is something we really don't talk about, do we? Where do we ever talk about grief? We don't talk about it at home, at school, at work. We just kind of wait until it arrives and then we try to navigate through. So that is truly what I am very passionate about changing, is talking about planning and preparing for grief and life's challenges before they arrive. So what is grief and when do we experience it? So in my opinion, and in speaking to thousands of people, I've come up with my definition, and that is that grief is our mental, physical, and emotional reaction to loss, transitions, and change. It's experienced in whatever makes your heart ache. It isn't just at end of life, which a lot of people believe. So when do you experience grief? Divorce, diagnosis, job loss, mental health issues, children leaving home, children not leaving home, get a job. In any transition, there can be grief. And even when they are good transitions, think about it. You have a baby, you are just absolutely delighted, and you may be grieving, well, sleep for one, and the fact that you can't just get up and go away for weekends whenever you feel like it without planning and preparing. And yes, thinking about meals and bottles and diapers and all of that. So no matter what change there is something to let go of. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we normalize these conversations about grief at home with our children, with our families, and developed coping skills and strategies and normalize these conversations? And the other thing that we don't recognize with grief is the fact that not everybody is just in the corner crying and you can tell that they're grieving because they have tears. Grief hits us in so many different ways: anger, irritation, confusion, sleeping too much or sleeping all the time, not being able to eat. Just it can affect us in so many different ways. And there is no timeline for grief, and there are no stages. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was an extraordinary woman who wrote a book. She wrote many books, actually, but she wrote a book called On Death and Dying. And she talked about the conversations she started with dying patients, and that she had observed these different feelings and these stages or phases. And the whole world kind of ran with this, saying, oh my goodness, there's 5 stages of grief, no matter what we are going through. That's not what she meant, actually. What she was trying to help us understand and convey was that grief was complicated. It is not linear. There's different emotions. And in fact, on my Rogers TV show, Real Life Talks, I'm so excited because I just interviewed Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's son, Ken Ross, and we did 2 shows to talk about this because her work was so misunderstood. And many people feel like, okay, there's 5 stages of grief. I'm going to go through them and then I'll carry on and then I'll be better. Grief doesn't really work that way. And so my goal, can you imagine if we normalize these conversations and understood that there is no right or wrong way to grieve, only if you are hurting yourself or someone else? That to me is the only time where we need to step in. And how long does grief last? Truly, grief is something that you build your new life around. I mean, obviously, depending on what the grief is and the situation. Certainly, when someone you love dearly dies, that is something that you carry with you. You continue the relationship, right? The relationship, death does not end a relationship, it changes it. The physical aspect of your relationship is over, you stay connected with stories and memories and staying spiritually connected. So again, imagine if our children, teens, and adults all understood this, and the fact that grief is a part of this journey. It is a part of living and loving, but it is worth it. And our hearts will heal if we learn how to take care of ourselves and each other, talk about, plan, and prepare. So I hope that this has just even piqued your curiosity to learn more about grief. And I certainly have a lot of resources on my website, loveyourlifetodeath.com, because this is my absolute mission in life, is to normalize these conversations, help us understand grief, and two other things, knowing that the way when people say, how do I get through it? The only way is to acknowledge and allow your grief. Grief demands to be heard. It will hide somewhere. It needs to be acknowledged and heard and allow those hard feelings. And I know we all want to fix people who are grieving. How do you fix them? You don't. You allow their grief and you just show up and just be there with them. And in my next video, I'm going to talk a lot more about just showing up for ourselves and each other. And just know that grief and joy can coexist, right? It isn't ever all one or the other. Life is a roller coaster, and we have to learn how to hang on through the dips and curves. So grief is not something to be ignored. Grief is not something to be avoided. It is part of this journey. And when we love, we may grieve. And so, again, have these conversations and feel free to reach out anytime. I love talking about this. I know people say, why do you love talking about grief? And I say, believe me, I didn't choose this, it chose me. But I just know that we can do this differently. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. So thank you so much. Take good care of yourself. And like I said, reach out anytime. Bye for now.